let me add something, maybe just to clarify on maybe to give contrast to what belief is and what certainty is. Okay, I am certain that I exist. Okay, that one I used Descartes. I think, therefore I am. Okay, so I'm thinking. Okay, I exist. I'm certain. Axiomatic.
Yeah.
Consciousness. I am certain that we're conscious because we. I'm certain that I'm conscious. You seem to be. You are conscious as well. And how do I know that? It's because we're experiencing it. How else could we? Just the fact that we're experiencing it. I think consciousness is next to existence. It's as certain as existence.
Do,
Do
do
you
you
agree that we're
do you
conscious?
know do you know that you're in a universe, Paris? In this universe, do you
Do I
believe
know that
that,
I'm in a universe?
or your consciousness is in this universe?
I know that I'm conscious. I don't know how. I
Yeah.
don't know how the consciousness is happening. I have some ideas about how
So
consciousness might
accept
be
your
happening, but I know I'm
existence
conscious.
and existence of your consciousness, then you don't know anything else, right? That's what
That's
you're claiming.
pretty true. That I basically I know consciousness exists. I know existence and I know consciousness. They are probably the two things that I am certain of.
Okay, so then everything else we can call it belief.
I would, in my case, yeah, I would call everything
Okay.
else belief.
Yeah, but
But it's interesting talking about God because for me, my definition of, if you want to talk about definitions, for me,
oh,
my
oh, Ian,
definition of God is
sorry, Paris, Ian. Oh, okay, he left. Anyway, if I upload the
okay. He left,
video, bye bye. Take care, Ian. Thanks for joining.
but he's still on my phone.
I think it's some latency, but he left and he also typed that he's leaving.
Okay.
So
Well, can I finish my idea just to
sure,
you?
sure,
Maybe
go
you're
on.
interested. I
Mike is
think as
yours.
a definition is of consciousness, I think that consciousness is God. So therefore, if I know that consciousness exists axiomatically, just as I know existence exists axiomatically, then I know God exists.
And
But
that's
my definition of God is consciousness. I'm not calling God Allah.
I understand, but Paris, that's an equivocation problem, right? You say consciousness equals God. I know consciousness exists, therefore I know God exists. That's an equivocation fallacy. You can't say that consciousness equals anything. So just because you know that it exists, that doesn't mean like the thing that you are, saying that equals doesn't mean it exists.
I can chuck the word out. I don't have to use the word God. I often just use the God word with religious people because they want to introduce God into the equation. So I say, okay, I'll substitute the word consciousness for God. But I can just carry on with consciousness. It's just a word. We're
Then we
talking
don't
about
have to
semantics.
discuss about that.
Yeah,
I also know that
I
consciousness
believe
exists.
in consciousness. Yeah, so
Me
that's it. I
too.
believe consciousness exists, and I believe that existence is here, and consciousness is the reason that everything
Wait,
is happening the way it's happening.
can you just repeat that last statement?
So the consciousness is the reason that everything is happening as such. It's
Everything is
happening
happening where?
everything's happening in terms of the way we're interacting with one another,
So if you were not
having
conscious, or
conversations.
if I was not conscious, if all these humans were not conscious, there wouldn't be anything happening in this universe? That's what you're claiming?
If there was no consciousness, there would be no humans. Human
No
beings only
humans?
exist. Yeah, for me,
Okay, but that doesn't
we.
mean nothing wouldn't exist, right? So if
So I don't
humans
think we
didn't
as
exist,
human beings would exist.
oh, okay, I understand that, but it's okay, no problem. But do you think if humans didn't exist, that means nothing existed? For example, animals. So we don't exist, let's say, that means animals don't exist also, or wouldn't exist?
No, that's not my
So
logic.
that means, well, we have consciousness and we don't know the source of the consciousness exactly. Like, like non religious people tend to claim or know or claim to know that the source is the brain, right? The activities in our brain causes consciousness. But believers kind of find another source and say, oh, it's soul, something that we cannot test. Okay. Okay. I don't know which one is true, definitely. But just because our consciousness doesn't exist, that doesn't mean nothing wouldn't exist, right? So then why we're talking about God then?
I don't understand what you were just
So
saying.
you have
Like for
consciousness,
me, I only
and
use
I'm
I only use the
convinced
word God because the only reason I use the word God is because for me, God would just be the creating force, right? So I'm
creating
saying that
force.
consciousness is the creating force. That's
Force
what I'm
of
saying.
what exactly?
That life exists so that consciousness can be. Like so I'm my
Life
statement
exists.
is that so that consciousness life exists in the way that it does. Like so we as human beings
Okay,
have the lives that we do so
so
that consciousness can
but that's
be.
another problem, it's a logical problem. Just because X exists and it has causes, that doesn't mean it was meant to or it was intentionally like caused by other things. So consciousness exists and it has causes, right? But that doesn't mean those causes intentionally targeted to create consciousness.
No, consciousness doesn't have causes. I
Doesn't
think
have causes?
consciousness is no consciousness is it's not produced in the brain. Its consciousness
Why do you think
is
so?
because it's too basic.
It's too basic.
It's too basic. It's too basic. Consciousness is the reason that human beings are even here. That we're even having this conversation. That the
Okay,
reason that
then
human
there's no
beings do
relation
anything.
between the source of the consciousness and what we're doing with the consciousness. Yeah. There's no connection at all. So
There is the connection can be. Go on.
you think that there's another source for consciousness, and I want to learn why.
No, I don't think there's another source for consciousness. I think
So
consciousness exists
in the
in just in
brain,
the same way that exists. No, it doesn't exist in the brain.
it doesn't
That
exist in the
we
brain.
existence. No.
Okay.
We in the brain on some level. The brain is integral to participate and to be in contact with consciousness. But consciousness is happening in the brain. No, it's not happening in the brain. It's happening.
It's happening in the brain or not happening in the brain? Which one?
Okay, does existence require the brain, or
Does
does existence
existence of
exist?
what?
The existence of everything that's happening right now
Oh no,
in the
sure. Like
universe.
if like human brains didn't exist, we cannot claim trees wouldn't exist, right? So
Okay,
but consciousness is another thing. Like if our brains didn't exist, maybe consciousness wouldn't exist, right? Because
why though?
why? Because we have at least evidence that consciousness is so related to our biological brains. I'm not saying that I'm certain. Maybe you're right. Maybe there's like external source of consciousness, which is soul that people are claiming. Okay, but we cannot test that right now. We don't have evidence for that or good evidence for that. But we have at least good evidence for consciousness that is originating from the brain. So that's why. So if our brains didn't exist, probably or maybe consciousness wouldn't exist. But if you claim otherwise, then what's your evidence? So if brains didn't exist, still our consciousness could exist. Like, but what is the evidence?
Um, I guess it's the same evidence that existence we
Existence of
exist.
what?
I think therefore I am is
Oh,
an axiomatic truth. So we
okay. I don't
exist,
have
yeah,
problem that the
axiomatically.
claim that you exist. I also believe that you exist, but there's no connection
So I
between.
think that consciousness is also in the same plane. I
And
think it's the fact. I think even I think therefore I am. Even the idea of even saying that, of wanting to say that, of needing to say that, is showing consciousness.
and like I like. Do you think, Paris, I have ever said consciousness doesn't exist?
No, but you're
No,
saying
right?
consciousness exists in the brain, as in therefore once human beings are not here, consciousness doesn't exist, when in
That's
fact,
what we expect. I can be wrong. Like if you remember clearly, I said I can be wrong. But if someone claims otherwise, which is consciousness exists, like doesn't matter if brain exists or not, I want to hear out what is the reason, evidence, like
it's, I don't know, it's the same. You can't give evidence for it. You need to
zero
have.
evidence.
It's no, it's just there are some things that you can't. There's no evidence. You can't even give evidence to the contrary. The evidence that you're talking about, that consciousness is produced in the brain, is not sufficient, and it's not
I
convincing
said
at
like
all.
at least we have some evidence that suggests that it's the source of the consciousness because when we
No,
die,
we have evidence that the
when
brain is necessary to pick up consciousness. Yes, if your brain is dead, then you could argue that you're no longer in contact with consciousness. But there's
yeah,
nothing no proof that it's actually being produced in the brain. Yes, the
I
brain
already
needs to be there.
accepted that maybe you're right, or maybe believers are right. Maybe the source is external. Maybe our brains are some sort of receiver and transmitter of consciousness. Okay, so and that's why I'm not certain if it's external. I don't know if it's external or not, but at least we have evidence to kind of be suspicious that the source is the brain. At least we have evidence for that. But when it comes to if it's external or not, we don't have evidence for that or good evidence for that.
Yeah, I think you're right. We don't. I think we don't think about it in the right way. We're looking at it. We're trying to solve it in a test tube or like in a science lab when that's not the way. Um, so I would argue that you have to look at it somehow through the lens of mythology and what human beings do. What do we do? We are effectively, what is life about? It's like a divine theater, isn't it? Life is a divine theater. You come here and you play roles throughout your life, and then what happens when you play those roles? You suffer. Well, usually you get caught up in the drama of the life, and you suffer, and you feel love, and you feel all these different emotions, and you go on a journey. And in that journey, you experience consciousness. So I think it's not about evidence. It's just about looking at what's actually happening. What happens is that conscious experience happens through something that we're doing, through the way that we're interacting with one another. Conscious experience is happening. To say that it's produced in the brain is just, I don't know, it just seems, well, first of all, it's not
Seems
convincing
smart.
anyway.
Like
It's
when it
not
comes to
convincing.
evidence, Paris, like that one is at least more convincing than the other one because at least we have some evidence. Doesn't mean it like definitely proves like the source of the consciousness, but like at least there is some evidence. But when it comes to the claim that it's external, we don't have good evidence for that. At least for me, there's no good evidence. But I would like to hear what is like if I say that like don't you see that the correlation between consciousness and a biological alive brain, like you see those connections, right? Or for example, if your brain is
Yeah.
damaged, then your consciousness can be affected by that, right? Or other things. So and
I see evil.
we see
Yeah.
correlation, okay? And I kind of think that it's at least some evidence, okay, to think that that's the source.
Well, that wouldn't it be better just to say everything, evolution itself, including all of the civilizations that have come and gone. No, but then before even civilization, the evolution that took place for us to get here. Let's say we accept evolution. We kind of evolved out of some kind of ape. That is conscious. That's a conscious effort on behalf of biology to,
Conscious
well, it's an
effort.
effort on part. Not an, see, this is the trick. It's not the conscious effort, but it happens such that consciousness can make itself, can actually be.
When you say so
So
that, it implies that there was someone targeted to result this consequence, but that's the
yeah,
belief, that's the
consciousness.
assumption. And again, just because X happens and it has causes, that doesn't mean those causes intentionally targeted that consequence. When you say so
It would
that,
if for
it sounds
example.
like that.
Mhm. Well, yeah. If you, for example, let's say let's say consciousness is a thing. Okay, let's say it's a thing and it wants to express itself. So in order for it to express itself, it needs human beings, because through human beings we have consciousness. It's a thing. So therefore, it would have to make the Big Bang. It would have to make the birth of the planets. Then it would have to make evolution happen. Then it would have to have the apes, who would then have to develop the neocortex, and then and such that then we have human beings and then we get involved in these civilizations and societies, and
Yeah,
basically the
Paris.
divine theater, and that divine theater would be the consciousness now expressing itself. So it's just a matter of how does consciousness express itself? It expresses itself through us.
You're talking about causes, and causes are not intentions. So that's what I repeated a lot, and I don't want to repeat again.
It's just like waving your hand or breathing. So when you breathe out, let's say for example we use the analogy of God. It's an analogy, okay? And he breathes out. That's the universe expanding. And then when he breathes in, that's the universe going back to zero. That's not a cause. That's an actual, it's just how it's like something from two perspectives. So I think consciousness is like that. It's not a cause. It's just such that the way consciousness experience, the actual the consciousness itself is this. It's not a cause of ABC. Consciousness is ABC. It is the relationship that we have to one another. It's the relationship that we have, is how we view ourselves in terms of the characters that we play.
What is
And
consciousness is
and
another topic, Paris. I don't want to delve into that one because it's way complicated and I'm ignorant about that topic. But X, I can call it X, and just because X exists, oh, sorry, I'm just repeating. I said I won't repeat, but you're
but I
forcing me
agree with
to
you.
repeat.
I agree with
Again,
you. Yeah,
we
I'm
don't,
not talking about causes and consequences
yeah, like
either.
if we both accept that we don't know the source of consciousness, whatever your definition doesn't matter, okay? So can
It
we
doesn't need a
make,
source.
sorry, come again?
Just as existence doesn't need a source, just as existence doesn't need a source. We know that
Huh.
existence exists. It doesn't. We don't care about the source. Why do we need to know about the source? Existence exists. I think, therefore I am. It exists.
Then that's another point. Do you think that consciousness always existed?
Yes,
How can you prove that?
because how can I prove that? I think
Yeah,
it's axiomatic. I think it's axiomatic in the same way that when I say I think, therefore I am. I
you
think the
think therefore, but you
consciousness
didn't
is.
exist always. You know that, right?
No, I mean, when you say I didn't exist, that doesn't mean existence
Well,
doesn't
we're
exist. That
not
just means
talking
that
about.
I.
Yes, we are talking about you. And so if you didn't exist before, so then that means X also may not exist before, which is consciousness in our topic. Maybe consciousness didn't exist also before. And what we observe consciousness in humans and other animals, right? And we know that we always didn't exist. So then, if you assume that, but consciousness existed way before us, that's a claim needs to be proven. I'm not claiming that it didn't exist, okay? Maybe you're right. It's
Yeah.
maybe axiomatic. Maybe it always existed. It's just like a disease that spreads in biological creatures, but it always existed. We just don't know how to detect out of our bodies. We don't know, maybe, okay? But
Mm.
what we observe, we see it when animals are alive, okay? And we don't see it in another way. So, and then it wouldn't be a very logical claim to say that it didn't exist before us. And it's possible, maybe it
Maybe it
didn't.
doesn't. Okay, maybe. Okay, how about this? Maybe when you say it doesn't exist, maybe it didn't exist in the way that we understand it. And let's say existence exists always, but then depending on how you filter existence, depending on the way human beings, well, first of all, we need human beings. Then the human beings have a certain way of being. And depending on what you do as a human being, you filter existence such that consciousness gives rise. So you could say that consciousness is a quality of existence,
I want to ask this:
but you
like, do
have
you
to
think
give rise.
tables always existed?
Tables, no,
Yeah.
no,
No. Okay. So
no,
then that means, yeah, that's the phone, I think.
no. I'm working. So yeah, I'm listening.
So you can claim that a table didn't exist before, or the tables that we are using right now, they didn't exist before. So there was a time on this planet that there were no tables, right? We can
Yes.
easily claim that. So then logically we can say that then there are things in this universe that didn't exist the way that they are. So but we know that tables are made of atoms and those atoms existed, right? But they were not tables, right? They didn't make a table, right? So, and we can easily claim that things, those objects, like when they're atoms, they may be in different forms and they may have different properties, right? A table is different than the scattered atoms that made the table before, right? They were different. Maybe like some of those atoms were, you know, causing other things. So, and consciousness, if it's a result of these things in the universe, okay, sure, whatever caused the consciousness, we can also say that, okay, yeah, the material, those atoms, they existed here. They always existed here. But like whatever they were involved in that time, they were not conscious or they were not causing something uh, conscious, right? But then somehow some specific atoms came together and voila, now we have consciousness. It's like the table.
Yeah, but that's not the same. It's not the same argument
Why
because
it's
you're
not the
talking
same? So
about
what's the
atoms.
difference
Because you're
between
talking about
consciousness
atoms coming
and
to.
table?
Okay, the difference is you're talking about atoms that were separate, and then atoms that came to contact and made compounds. Or I don't know what you call it, carbon trees, and then their trees were made into tables, and that's different. That's something that was
How different?
put together. So with consciousness, it's not that you're putting something together to make
How do
consciousness.
you know that?
It's that you're. How do I know it?
Yeah, because we didn't
Well,
have an agreement about the source
I
of.
guess I don't. I guess I don't, but I intuitively would say that consciousness is not something that you put together. Consciousness is something that gives rise to itself based on human
It's very
experience.
intuitive for you then
Something
somehow.
that, yeah, it's something, it is intuitive, just as consciousness is intuitive. So if I'm conscious, I know that I'm conscious based on something that's happening in the way I'm interacting with you. I'm interacting with the person who's viewing me, the observer.
I
Like
never
that, everyone has an
question.
observer.
I've never questioned your existence and having consciousness. I've never questioned that. But again, you're coming to this statement again and again. I don't understand why. But the thing is, when you said like I intuitively know or believe that the consciousness is not like a table, like like atoms, particles come together and cause something new, and we have a name for it. So you don't think in this way, and your answer is intuitively.
It's
Okay,
obvious. No, that has to be
it's not,
obvious.
but it's
We're
not
not
obvious,
putting
right?
consciousness together. It is
You're
obvious.
not putting,
You're not putting. We're
but
not
okay,
creating consciousness like we create a
that's
table.
the thing. Like we didn't have an agreement about the source of the consciousness, and that means yes, maybe okay, brain is the source of consciousness, creating the consciousness, okay? And
No,
the brain is made of
existence.
parts, right? And the brain is made of parts like a table, okay? So we can go back, okay? Like the table. So then that means it can be like a table, right?
Consciousness is existence is conscious. The
Existence is
brain is just part
consciousness.
of existence. I would say, yeah, maybe that makes more sense to say that existence is one thing we're 100% axiomatically true. Yes, it's existence.
Yeah,
It
existence
is
exists. Yeah.
right.
I don't
So
know the word.
therefore, that human experience gives allows us to see consciousness. But we need to have a human experience for consciousness to be seen, to be known. Consciousness makes itself the consciousness of existence makes itself known through human beings. So human beings are necessary for consciousness to make itself known, not the other way around. We don't humans beings don't produce consciousness.
How do you know that?
This is a difficult question.
Yeah, that was the
Seems
question
obvious.
because it's not obvious to me and to other people also. Maybe it's obvious to you, and I can catch easily the like composition fallacy that you're having. You're looking at the universe, you see human beings and animals which have consciousness, and you assume that it's general, like everything is conscious, the existence is conscious, and that's a logical
No, it's not
fallacy.
general. No, it's not general.
Okay, then
Consciousness is
so
something that human
we are
beings
part of this universe.
have.
That's true, right?
Yeah, of course, we're part of the
So we
universe.
are conscious.
We
We
are
also
yeah,
agree on that.
we're conscious. Yes.
Yes, but do you think that means therefore everything is conscious?
No, I'm not saying everything is conscious. I'm
So
saying that existence wants to make it existence. Let's say we use the word existence wants to become conscious, right?
wants to
And that it becomes yeah, existence is conscious. Consciousness is an act. Consciousness is a will. It's just a thing. Consciousness must happen. So therefore, human
must
beings
happen.
must happen. Yeah, we are
Uh,
here to
like
so that
very
consciousness, not by cause not cause and consequence, but just by consciousness equates to human experience. The human experience is where consciousness reveals itself. It reveals itself through through the human interaction, the
uh,
human drama.
very questionable beliefs. Like you're saying that consciousness has a desire, it wants to exist. Like you can't prove those things,
It
right?
doesn't have a desire, it just is.
You said want, right? What does it mean
It's
want?
hard. You're using human language. You know, when you use human language, it's very difficult to use.
Which one is more
But
logical to use, human language or like another language that we don't know?
it's hard. We're restricted. I could try and use poetry. You know, that's why we have poetry. Poetry
That's
tries to put
how
things into words that
you
don't make sense.
bring a lot of, ambiguous things on the table, right? We're not talking about poetry here, and it will confuse everything. But welcome, friend. Yeah.
No, I know.
Hey,
Yeah.
thanks, thanks. I think what she's saying reminds me of something called integrated information theory, and the way I would put it would be more um, like existence is kind of linked with consciousness, but I mean it doesn't really solve all the questions that we're talking about, right? Like, um, does consciousness exist separate from like the physical structure of the brain and all of these things? Like it's just kind of a different way of thinking about um, what it means to be conscious, but I don't think it really solves any of those fundamental questions um, that mind is saying. Yeah, I don't think um, how can consciousness happen without a brain, right?
I think I understand what you're saying. You're saying that even if let's say that consciousness wanted to make itself known, there's no reason that it shouldn't make itself known by it being a byproduct of the brain. There's no reason why it couldn't
Yeah,
do that. Is that what you're
yeah.
saying?
Not exactly. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure what you mean by consciousness wanting to do something. The way I would put it is that we could say that consciousness is sort of bundled up with existence, right? Like, we experience things. We experience things all at once, right? So all the aspects of an experience kind of go together, right? That's the idea. So kind of like existence goes with consciousness, but that doesn't solve the question of, can you have consciousness without existence, right? Or if you did if you didn't have a brain, could you still be conscious, right? That doesn't solve that problem. And like mine said, it's kind of an unknowable thing, unanswerable thing, at least now.
Yeah, but we're not talking about that. Like, so obviously without a brain, you can't be consciousness. It depends what you mean by you. If you mean your body, the one that was born in my case, in Britain, and the passport and my name and who my parents are, no, that one can't be conscious. But that doesn't say that consciousness doesn't exist.
Sure, but that's kind of my point.
Consciousness exists.
Yeah, that's why I said which one have more evidence. Like, can you show any consciousness without any body? Like, there's no body, human body, animal body, but there is consciousness. Do you have any example of that?
Yeah, the example is the fact that the universe has basically produced us. But why
that doesn't mean
produced us
it
to be
did
conscious?
It consciously. That doesn't mean it had consciousness.
It does.
No,
I would say
mean.
that the reason that we have it wouldn't have a byproduct of a random byproduct like that. But this is a kind of
how do you know that?
It just doesn't. It just seems so basically intuitive. That consciousness is not a byproduct. It's true. I understand where you're going. You want me to prove it in some scientific way. I can't. I think you can't. We can't do science on this. We have to think in a deeper way, an even deeper way.
You're just believing. I think that's the only thing.
Yeah. Again, I think it's not a belief. I think it's axiomatic in the same way that existence. I think, therefore I am. It's not a belief. It's so a fact that we're conscious.
Paryss, oh my god, Paryss. Again, this is the fourth time you're just stating that. Like, we don't have any problem when you say I have consciousness or I am conscious. We all agree about that. Please don't repeat the same thing, because that's not our topic, okay? We don't have any problem when you say I'm conscious.
Your topic is that it's produced in that. You're saying that it's produced in the brain. It could be.
The evidence shows that, but I'm not sure about that. I told you, right? Like, maybe you're right. I said maybe you're right. Or maybe believers, Muslims, Christians are right. Maybe soul exists. Maybe soul is the source of consciousness. I don't know that, but I don't have the belief. I don't believe in that because I need evidence for the soul also. But at least I have evidence for brains, and I have evidence that there is a lot of correlation between consciousness and the brain, physical brain, right? That's why I kind of lean towards believing that it's the source of the consciousness.
Okay, what about existence then? Do you think that the brain is the source of existence?
Our brains? The existence of what?
Do you believe that the brain is the existence, like
source
existence,
to what?
The Big Bang, this conversation, the universe.
My brain. I don't think my brain is the source of Big Bang.
Okay, so you don't think your brain is the source of Big Bang? Why? Why don't you think that it might be the source of the Big Bang?
Because I don't think my brain existed. Because I don't think that my brain existed before Big Bang. I don't have any evidence for it, and I have contrary evidence that my brain or an animal's brain came later on into existence in this universe.
Yeah, but you're saying that you have evidence that the brain came later. Yeah, the brain came later. But so why does the Big Bang? Why is that separate from the brain? But when it comes to consciousness, for some reason you have doubts and you think that consciousness is produced in the brain. I don't understand why. Why is consciousness less than the Big Bang? Why is Big Bang put on a higher pedestal than consciousness? Consciousness itself is on the same level as the Big Bang.
It's on the same level as the Big Bang?
Yeah, like in what way are you're saying the Big Bang exists and it's got nothing to do with the brain? That it happened regardless of whether the brain came into being.
We can reverse that. Paris, okay, but then you have to bite a very big bullet to do that, which is you, okay, exist, your consciousness exists, and that's the only thing that exists in the existence. That's the only thing that exists, and rest of it came later, which is your consciousness created Big Bang and everything. You're all alone, so it would be a
Well, I
bigger
don't
bullet.
claim that.
You don't
I
claim
don't
that,
claim
but
that.
that's the way that you can think about that logically. If that's the case, then we should think like that. But we are living in a universe where we have a causal chain, right? So my brain exists. I see consciousness in the brains, in animals, humans, whatever. Okay, but when I look at other things, like I don't see consciousness. Okay, and we assume that we didn't exist always in this universe based on scientific evidence, right? So okay, then which came first? Our brains or Big Bang?
No, the Big Bang came first, just in the
Okay,
same way that consciousness came first.
uh,
Consciousness
just
is the Big Bang. They're one and the same thing. Why
consciousness
would the
is the
Big Bang
Big
even
Bang.
happen? Of
That's
course,
a
why would the
question.
Big Bang even happen
It's just a
if there
question.
wasn't consciousness?
Okay, there can be a lot of answers for that, Paris. There were like non-conscious causes together and they caused the Big Bang. You see, the one explanation. Just because X happened, that doesn't mean Z is necessary for that thing, right?
There were unconscious causes, and once the Big Bang happens, then those causes become conscious. They become
No,
conscious
that
on
doesn't
their own,
mean those
just in the
causes
same.
became conscious immediately. Because again, when we look at this universe, like all those things seems like they're unconscious, okay? But like the combination of all those particles and etc. maybe resulted our consciousness, like, because we observe consciousness when our brains existed, okay?
Yeah, but why? It seems like when you say talk about evidence, it seems intuitively obvious that why would anything come together if not for an actual conscious reason?
Uh,
It might have been
yeah,
that before the Big Bang there were unconscious
yeah, very
things, but once the
simple.
Big Bang happened,
Very simple, when it rains and it's washes out the dirt on your car, we don't assume that the rain or the clouds has consciousness and deliberately wanted to clean your car, right? So that means we can look at things and we don't see consciousness and they resolve things, right? That doesn't mean they have to
no,
be
that's true.
conscious of what they're doing.
No, but they lead to consciousness.
That doesn't mean
So,
they do it intentionally or they're aware of what they're doing, okay?
hmm.
I think the strongest argument for what Paris is saying would be, can there's no way that you can create consciousness, or so far we haven't found a way to create consciousness through deterministic means. So, like, I can't build a computer, AI hasn't gotten to the point where I can build a computer that has consciousness, right? So it had to come from somewhere, right? So I mean, you can either assume that evolution created it through deterministic means, or that the brain is some kind of a receiver or something, like you said before, right? That kind of receives it, and that it's some kind of a force on its own, right? But like Mindful said, we don't know, right? Like we have no way of knowing because there's no evidence. There's no evidence either way, like it's just as reasonable to assume that deterministic forces created it somehow, like.
It's true. It's true. It's true. Like you can't prove it in a science lab. What I would say, just that you have to just make. I have to make a choice. Which one seems more convincing, and it seems way more convincing to me. My idea than the idea that it's produced in the brain. Okay, I don't know, but I find it. I find it. I find it. I find it weird that you could believe that consciousness was just produced in the brain. Like consciousness, we're talking about something that is so mystical. So it's like you can't even begin
There's no
to
rule.
put it into
X is
words.
mystical, therefore it cannot come from the brain. There's no such a rule, Paris. Doesn't matter what you
Hmm.
attribute to consciousness, but whatever you think consciousness is, it's not an evidence that it cannot come from the brain.
Yeah, okay. I mean, like I said, I can't talk about. I just know that for a fact, reductionist, materialistic evidence for consciousness in the brain is unconvincing. 100%.
Yeah, I could also
There's
claim
no
that.
there's no evidence. There's no evidence either way. Yeah, there's no evidence either way. The other one is not evidence in the lab. It's based on self-realization. It's based on having spirit. It's based on spiritual truth.
Which
I
one
feel.
is self-realization? Because again, like this will be the fifth time that I'm just correcting you. We are not suspicious about like the notion that you have consciousness, we don't have any problem with that. So we're talking about the source of the consciousness.
I don't know. Mm, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I can't. It's obviously not convincing the idea that it's produced in the brain. It's not convincing.
But the other thing is why it's more convincing for you. One of your answer was intuitively, okay? But the
To
intuitions are
me,
not
it's more. I gave you I gave you mine, but it's not, like I said. It's not science. I gave you a different kind of way of describing consciousness, and it's not scientific. It's. I think consciousness arises through the divine theater of life. That we, as human beings, we there is an actor. We are an actor, and we play roles. So, but the role is not the actor. Like Johnny Depp is not Jack Sparrow, and then we have the spectator. The spectator is who watches the play, who watches the performance, and we also watch our performance. So on some level, when we are acting a role, we can forget ourselves and we can identify with a role, but on some level, depending on how conscious we are, we know that it's kind of a role and we're watching it. And I think consciousness comes from that. So it's not a scientific argument, but I feel like it's a much more powerful argument
much
than
more
what they talk about
powerful.
yeah, like to me, it's deeper than what they say, how it's produced in the brain, like some kind of, like, I don't know, vapor that
Yeah.
comes off the brain.
So if you
I mean, come
remember
on.
our conversation with Ian, so as you see, that's the proof that it's subjective, right? So that kind of evidence is more powerful to you. And I mean, and I don't care that much about different kind of, a way of, proving things, which is unscientific way of proving you're trying to do. It seems to you more powerful. And I just disagree. And this also subjective.
But you believe that it's produced in the brain. Is that your belief? I'm not saying you know
No,
that,
it's
but you
it's
believe
it's
it's
not a
produced
strong
in the
belief,
brain.
Paris. Like I
It's not
can't
a
claim
strong
to
belief.
know it. Yeah, but if
Mm,
I would bet my money, I would bet my money on it's produced in the brain.
okay.
Yeah. So I'm saying that because like many times like I'm being accused by not having any beliefs on anything. So that's not true, and I'm not doing it just to show some evidence. That's what I think. I mean, like the evidence that consciousness is produced in the brain, the evidence is more than it comes externally. Because I don't see any consciousness out of the brain. We don't have examples of that. Then why should I believe that the source is external? Again, that doesn't mean it's not external.
It's kind of like Occam's razor, right? It's the simplest explanation. That's the most to me when Paris said it's more intuitive. To me, it's more intuitive to suggest that consciousness comes from the brain, right? Like that's the hardware for it, and you know, the software is the consciousness, kind of. So to me,
Yeah,
that feels very intuitive.
to me also.
That doesn't necessarily mean that it's right, and I think that's kind of where we can all agree, yeah, that it's
We agreed. Yeah.
not really something that's knowable. Yeah.
What about interestingly, do you think that dreams have anything to say about consciousness, or does that also just play into the idea that it's produced in the brain? Like when we dream, we have we have we go into worlds that are not even, they're all produced They seem to have all the characters in the dreams even seem to have their own consciousness.
And
So how do the characters have their own consciousness if the consciousness is produced in the brain? Are we producing consciousness for several characters at once?
why not? I mean, if you have the source and it's in you, okay, then you can use the same source, right? Why not? How do you explain schizophrenia?
I don't really know because I'm not
Yeah,
schizophrenic.
but
So.
it's not even necessary. So if we have the source, okay, and again, like we didn't agree about the source, right? So it doesn't matter, like it comes from where exactly. Maybe there is only one source for your own consciousness, and those dreams that you're mentioning, maybe just taking that source, one source, and multiplying it or copy pasting it, and just making it different, and you experience that they're kind of different consciousness and comes from different sources, and it's another mistake to make.
Mm.
But still, it doesn't solve our problem because it could go both, right? If it's produced in our brains, we can have this kind of result, okay? Maybe we're using that as a database, okay, our consciousness, and we are copy pasting and creating different consciousness over that consciousness. Or if it's external, so we may do the same thing, or the consciousness is doing the same thing in the dreams.
But when you would say produced in the brain, it makes a consciousness out to be something like a drug. It makes it out to be. It gives the idea that consciousness is a bit like serotonin, or what other types of neurotransmitters do we have? What other types of hormones do we have? And
Mm-hmm.
it makes it sound like a hormone or something in the body. But consciousness is not serotonin. Consciousness it's actually an experience that we're having. It exists not as a consequence. It actually is the experience. It is the interaction between. Well, this is the reason I say this is a better description of consciousness. It is the interaction between the actor, the role, and the spectator, the observer. That is consciousness. To say that consciousness is produced in the brain like serotonin, it doesn't say anything.
It doesn't say anything.
Yeah, what does it say? What do you mean consciousness is produced in the brain? That means nothing. It has no explanatory use. What we're talking about
Explanatory
consciousness.
use.
How can you just? Yeah, what is consciousness?
I
Consciousness
don't think
is.
I don't think that disproves subjectivity. You know what I mean? Like, I have chemicals in my brain that produce a certain sensory response. Like, for example, let's say we're drinking like from the same coffee, like pot of coffee, and I like the coffee and you don't like the coffee. That doesn't mean that it wasn't chemicals in our respective brains that produced that consciousness. You know what I mean? Like, it just means that my brain is a little bit different from your brain.
I know what you're saying. Now, obviously, for example, you might have certain receptors that. So when you drink coffee, that your body you like coffee, or your body, I don't know, responds in a good way with coffee. Whereas perhaps another person, they might feel very, it cause their body to have different physical symptoms. But I think that when you're talking about serotonin, or you're talking about hormones, or what are some of the other types of transmitters, they're more like physical phenomena, like physical things that are actually happening in your body. So consciousness is an awareness of those things. And you're
Sure,
saying that
sure.
when you're saying that it's produced in the brain, it's almost like you're saying awareness is produced. But what do you mean produced?
It
Like,
doesn't
I can
mean it
understand
doesn't.
when you say it's Yes.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that awareness is the same thing as those chemicals, right? Like it's a result in some way. Like, I mean, I understand what you're saying, right? I think that this is the big question that everyone's arguing about. It's not an easy. I think I think that there's definitely it's a really complicated question that everybody's arguing about. But take like the example of like the zombie, right? Like let's say like they call them the P zombie. So P zombie is basically a person minus consciousness, right? So let's say you have a P zombie, and so P zombie has a working brain minus consciousness, right? This person doesn't have it has a brain but doesn't have consciousness, right? So we're still back to where we started. Is consciousness the result of an external force, kind of like what you're saying, or is it just something that happens, from inside the brain, and then you have all of these chemicals, neurotransmitters working in the brain, and then somehow when you put them all together, then you get consciousness, right? It doesn't really
Yeah.
solve the question.
Maybe it was our bad, Fred. Maybe we should accept, because when we say brain causes consciousness, I mean it doesn't have to be in that way. So, like X causing brain plus consciousness could be the case also, but this X could
Yeah.
be still our body or biological process, right?
I think so. I mean, I think that the biological process is at least part of it, right? I'm not convinced that it's the only thing, but
Yeah.
What about though if you, let's say you buy your act, let's say by not the brain, but by the sociological reality, the way that human beings, um, the human experience, okay? Like I said, first of all, do we agree? Actor, role, and spectator, do we agree on that?
I
Does
don't
that
understand what you
represent,
mean
that
by that
represent,
analogy. Um,
I mean that, so there is an act, there is the person who acts, right? And then there is the role that you act. So the roles that you take in society. It could be many roles. It could be your deeper roles, like the most basic roles are your gender, and then your roles of like in whether you're married, your husband, wife, children, your profession, where you're from. These are roles, yeah, who you are, and then the president of the United States. Some people who have written on this subject would say that there are only about 30 roles actually that exist, but they need to be filled. There are only about 30. There are not infinite amount of roles, but we all play roles. But there's an actor who plays those roles. There's also an observer that is observing the roles that you play. On some level, there is an observer in you and me observing the roles that you are playing. And also there is an observer out there, the spectator, the person who watches the performance, just like we watch a film, we watch theatre. So that's what I'm talking about.
yeah, but that
And do
analogy,
we?
I don't think it helps if I didn't misunderstand, because we have consciousness, other people have consciousness, we play a role, and they watch us, and we watch them. So what?
Mhm. Because we only know about consciousness through that. That is what I'm saying. We watch them, they watch us. We act roles. We're aware of the roles. We interpret the roles. We're like forming a story, but not rather than just listening to the story, or we're actually acting within the story. And that is where consciousness takes place. So maybe you could say that I don't want to use the word
We're
produced,
talking
but
about the
I
origin
think
of
that's a better
consciousness, but
production. That's a better origin than produced in the brain. The origin would be what we do as human beings, would be what produces the consciousness, rather than it being produced in the brain. It would be what we're actually doing on a societal level.
I think
Because
now like
what
we
does it
are
mean
using the consciousness in a different way, and I don't want to engage with the like definition of consciousness, because it will create more and more problems.
that's the problem.
That will
That's the
be,
problem.
yeah, that will
That's
be
the
a huge
problem. We
problem.
don't have a we don't even know what it is, right? We don't have a definition of it, right? So like let's say could we have P zombies running around playing roles? Is it possible? I guess not. I
No,
guess
they're
by
not
your
conscious.
Yeah.
Like just in the
So
same way that, like, yeah, we're conscious when we write mythologies, and we watch TV, and we watch films, and we have art, etc. We're consciousness because we have conscious because of that's what we're doing. That's where consciousness comes from. Well, certainly that's where I would say that's where consciousness reveals itself. But you might say, okay, it's produced in that way. But certainly that's a better production of consciousness than to say that it's produced in the brain. It doesn't mean that it's meaningless to say it's produced in the brain. What do you mean produced in the brain? Like what, vapor? Like serotonin?
I
Consciousness is
think we
not
corrected
serotonin.
that one, Paris. Like, please, like, um, keep in mind, well, we corrected that one. Yes, maybe like the language that we use can be,
is a
causing
big
this
clue. Yeah.
problem. Okay,
Yeah.
but maybe again, like all these particles in this universe. Okay, and the things that causes our body, the combination caused the consciousness. Okay, and when it comes to the source, like you don't have to take it like brain causing the consciousness. You can say that they coexist, but like it's the combination of all these particles. You can think like that. It's not like first brain, then later on. You don't have to think
That's
like
how I
that.
think. That's how I think. I agree. I agree with that. I think that it's not caused. The brain didn't cause consciousness. The brain is why consciousness shows itself. Like, so the consciousness requires a human form. The human form consists of a spine and a brain
No
and a
problem at all.
neocortex.
What you're
So
saying right now.
therefore, consciousness now shows itself.
Exactly. So it occurs when all these things are together. I agree with you. Okay. But still, the source is our body, right? Like all this combination, our bodies are, if they were not in this form, could we speak about consciousness? Maybe not, right?
The
That's what we were
source
talking
alone
about.
is not the body. Yeah, one of the sources is body, yes. One of the sources is human body, yes. But it requires more than the
But a
human
human
body. It
body
requires the
is not
interaction of
something
humanity.
external that we were talking so far, right? We were talking about when we say brain, like we also meant human body, right? We're not separating them; they're
Yeah.
together.
Sure.
So
Yes?
if you
Yeah.
accept that the source of the consciousness is human body, then that's the thing that we will both agree. I think.
No, because it's not just the human body; it's the human experience. Hence the reason I gave the idea about the actor and the role and the observer.
Human experience.
Yeah, society. The fact that
If
we
no
are having the
society, no
conversation
consciousness.
is exactly without this conversation. There is no consciousness. Consciousness will show itself through this conversation that we're having now.
No
If everybody in if everybody in the world and everything in every living being on Earth dies except you, is there consciousness?
So it would have to produce us again so that it could show itself.
But you already exist. You didn't die. You only exist. So therefore, no consciousness.
While consciousness shows itself, then human beings are having this experience. This is where consciousness shows itself. If human beings are not here, then consciousness is not revealing itself. Consciousness is unconscious. It's hard to use the right language.
Yeah, I think like we could be wrong about this one, Fred, because that example. So if she claims that the collection of things, which is society, which she said, so even if all they die, that doesn't mean that came from the society, right? So you solely
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
exist.
Yeah. 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 We were. Yeah. You're right. You're right. I did kind of
Me
jump off a
too.
cliff
I
on
also
that.
jumped, but yeah, later on I thought
But
about it.
here's what I would say to me, like the thing that would make me think that would lead me to that would lead me to kind of go down Paris's point of view. And it's let's go back to the idea of a pea zombie, right? Like, how would you make a pea zombie, right? Like, how would you if what would you take out of somebody's brain to take the consciousness away from them, right? Like, what would you do? Now, maybe there is a way that you could create a zombie. Maybe there is something that, there's some kind of lobotomy that you could give somebody that would take away their consciousness. But I think it would be really hard. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, it's really, really, really hard to fathom, And so that's kind of what would make me think that there's something to what Paryss is saying. Yeah, how can you take consciousness away from the brain? You know, now of course that doesn't necessarily mean that maybe there is a way, right? Maybe there's something that you could take away, right? If we get from the brain, we have to add something there that we don't know about to get to consciousness, right? Then maybe it is possible that you could take it away and that we don't know it, right? It's the same thing over and over again. But that would be the thing that would kind of sort of convince me a little bit.
I have a small idea about what do you call consciousness. I actually don't believe that there is something called consciousness in itself. It's just we are creatures like animals, like us. We are not different. Animals also have consciousness, but because we are have this unique civilization, we are calling ourselves that we have unique consciousness and super I don't know how to say it, but there's something about the consciousness of it's called Westworld. This series is talking about that humans is just or even subconsciousness or unconsciousness. It's just some of psychological things that they are theoretically defined at. Did you got me?
Somewhat, but I think your connection is not great. So some of the words, I didn't hear all of the words that you said, Kareem.
But again, like as I said before, it's not a topic that I really wish to talk, which is the definition of consciousness, because it's even, you know, it's harder than this one. Still, we're at the edge of this, consciousness thing, but we are not defining it. But it's okay so far. But if you really wish to define, I don't want it. But society, what if there's no society from now on? Well, let's suppose all human died. Okay, let's change that example, the previous example. There won't be consciousness anymore. No humans, animals, therefore no consciousness. Can we say that?
Yeah, we were talking about that. That's what I think. I think that consciousness requires human beings, but that doesn't mean that human beings produce it. It's just like saying if you want to convey a message, it requires words. Yes, if I have a message for you, I require language to do so. So if consciousness wants to be conscious, it requires human beings to do so.
Wants to, again,
But
like
it doesn't. The human, yeah,
words.
it's
word
hard
of
to. I don't
choices.
know how to. The language is so difficult because we're talking about something like this. It's very hard
You
to
are
use
making
language.
it complicated, Paryss. If you
I don't
say
know how else to
consciousness
say it.
want to do something, that's an alien language to me. And if you
Well,
want to communicate,
if I say I have a message, go on, listen to you.
you want to communicate, and if you want to understand each other, then you should force yourself to use the simple language which we understand each
Well,
other.
I can try. So, like, let's say I have a message for you. Yeah, I require words. I require that understanding of a language and words to convey that message to you.
There are a lot
That
of
does
ways.
not mean that. Okay, but let's say one of the ways is language. So it does not mean that the message was a result of the language.
The
No,
message
the language was a vehicle by which I conveyed the message to you.
Yeah, but message was resulted by you, right?
I have a message for you. I use language in order to convey that message to you.
Okay.
But that does not mean that the language was the cause of
I think we agreed
you
before
receiving the message.
that, like, we retreated from the claim that consciousness comes exactly from the brain, or it's the only thing causes consciousness. Like, we retreated from that claim, Paris, but still you're bringing same analogies to
I'm bringing it in
convey,
relation to what you just said, because you said, what
which
happens if
is
society doesn't exist? I said, if society doesn't exist, then consciousness would not be conveyed. Just in the
would
same
not
way
be
that, so for
conveyed,
example,
but
conveyed.
But then that language sounds like, or like that statement sounds like, it always exists. It only seeks for tools to convey its existence or to make it clear or something like. And again, that's an
Something
alien
like that.
language. Yeah, but like again, like these are just a lot of things that you have to prove, which is consciousness can exist solely without depending on humans and anything. It just finds place to enter, shows itself to other things, or like again, like all these like.
Okay, can a message exist solely without language? Like, so if I have a message for you, but I require language to present that message to you,
We can
without
convey
language,
a
is there a
message without
message?
a language. Yes.
This argument has been around for a long time. Yeah, like can you have a private language? Can a language exist that is only spoken by one person?
That's another thing. But then
No,
that
but
would
I'm
be
saying my point is it's kind of a pointless argument. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of the same thing. Does the language have an existence independent of its use? It's kind of the same idea.
Well, no, does a message have existence independent of language? Like, so yeah, I'm saying I need language in order to convey instructions to you.
I'm not
Do
saying any.
instructions have?
I'm
That's what
not
I'm
saying
saying. No?
I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying that it's kind of the same argument that everybody's been going in circles over for 100 years.
Okay, well, just different direction. You said, I think you said about what could you remove from a zombie's brain or something, so that consciousness wouldn't
Yeah.
happen. I
Uh-huh.
just use an example of dreams. Like when you dream at night, most people are not very conscious. So when I talk about consciousness, by the way, I'm talking about something called meta consciousness. I'm not talking about just general, just kind of zombie consciousness. I'm talking about meta consciousness, which is the kind of consciousness that would be in play if you see something bizarre happen in a dream, and then you go, "Hey, that shouldn't happen." Like normally, pink elephants don't like sleep in my bed. This must be a dream. Okay, I'm dreaming. And that's the meta consciousness, and that's the kind of consciousness that I'm talking about. But actually, in dreams, we don't do that. We're very, very unconscious in dreams in a way. We see things, but we're not very conscious because you think about all the stupid things that happen to you in dreams. We don't even realize that we're dreaming. We don't even realize that this is made up. We actually believe it. My conclusion is that yeah, we already have that thing removed from us at night, and most people once they go to sleep, whatever it is that is required to be conscious is removed.
Whatever you're saying, that whatever it is, that the existence of this thing is kind of reflected in dreams. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Mindfulness.
I'm just listening.
It's an interesting point.
Or
Have you
maybe I
guys
missed.
have you ever had a lucid dream? Have you ever had a lucid dream?
Maybe once or twice, I think.
So lucid dream, if anyone who's listening, is when you recognize that things are not such that, well, you realize that there's things happening in the dream that you're asleep, and you recognize that the building is not in the right place. You don't have the same body. I don't know. You're not hanging around with people that you normally hang around with. You're doing something bizarre. I don't know. There's so many really weird things happening, and then you recognize it's a dream, and then at that point you're conscious, and then you can go off and do things in the dream. You can go off and have conversations with people, knowing that it's a dream. That's another subject. But most of the time we don't do that. We're not
But what's the
aware.
point,
Stupid things
Paryss?
happen to us.
But what's
The point is that that's consciousness, and that for the most part whatever that thing that Fred was talking about, could we remove it from people so that they're not conscious? Yeah, that happens at night.
Sorry, come again. If you remove what?
So consciousness is the ability to be able to question the continuity and the consistence of reality. That's what it means to be conscious. That's what I mean by consciousness. I mean being able to question the consistence and the continuity of reality. Like, so for example, if suddenly there's two suns in the sky, I should go, hey, that's really bizarre. That is not the world that I know. I know the world to have one sun. This must be a dream. That I'm able to do that because I'm conscious. If I wasn't conscious, I would just look at the sun. There's two suns in the sky, and I wouldn't react. I'd be like, it's kind of like being half asleep. Okay, so there's like, I don't know. Yeah.
Like how this helps to our conversation. I mean,
well, because I was saying, remember, I was saying that is there something that is there something that you could take away? Like, is there a way that you could go from the state of consciousness to like a zombie that is kind of conscious, is kind of awake but not conscious, right? To kind of think, give ourselves a way to kind of think about where consciousness comes from, right? And then she said, well, a dream could be an example of that, right? Because when you're in a dream, you're not fully conscious. But of course, it doesn't really solve the problem because it's possible that when you're dreaming, something gets shut down in your brain that makes it so that you're not conscious. It doesn't necessarily prove that there's anything coming from the outside, but it's an interesting point. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. It wasn't a greater point about proving anything about where consciousness comes from. It was more in relation to what Fred said. It's just, yeah. Is there something you can remove? That was the reason I said it. Yeah.
It could be an indication. It could be an indication also that there is something, right? Like that thing that you're talking about does exist because there's that thing that happens, right? That when we dream, we're not normally conscious. So maybe it's because the brain shuts something down that it can't receive that consciousness. Yeah.
And to be fair, there are chemicals that are required. Like, so for example, people who study lucid dreams, they know that if you have a lack of not cortisol, there's another word for it, choline, in the diet, it produces something else. I forget what it produces. It produces some chemical necessary. If you don't have that chemical, you're likely to be not to be meta-conscious. So to be fair, there are chemicals that are required to be meta-conscious as well.
Oh, you guys went silent. I was not here.